I'm Ann Morrison. I'm 28 years old. Last Father's Day, my father sent me a bill for $418,000. The subject line read, "The cost of raising a disappointment." He shared it in our family WhatsApp group, all 36 relatives, every aunt, uncle, cousin, and in-law from Pennsylvania to California. He thought I would cry. He thought I would apologize. He thought I would shrink into myself like I always did. But this time, I replied with a single screenshot. By the next morning, 35 of them had blocked him. The 36th, my grandmother, didn't block him. She did something far worse. Before I tell you what that screenshot was and what my grandmother did, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me start from the beginning. I work as a senior accountant at an auditing firm in Philadelphia. Numbers make sense to me. They don't lie. They don't play favorites. They don't tell you one thing and mean another. People, on the other hand, especially my family, are a different story. My apartment is small, 550 square feet, in Fishtown. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I've paid the rent myself since I was 22. No help from anyone. My brother Roger, 3 years older, just bought a townhouse in Society Hill. Our father gifted him the down payment, $95,000 wrapped in a bow of "We're so proud of you." I found out about it through his Instagram post, a photo of Roger holding the keys, captioning it, "Best dad ever, thanks for believing in me." When I graduated college, I got a text from Dad, "Congratulations, 4 days late." No exclamation point. When Roger got promoted at his consulting firm, they threw him a party, catered, champagne. The whole family flew in from 3 different states. I don't say this to complain. I stopped expecting anything different a long time ago. You learn to measure your worth in things you can control: your work, your savings account, the peace of your own space. Daniel, my boyfriend of 2 years, asks me sometimes why I still go to family gatherings, why I still pick up when my father calls, why I let his comments slide off me like water. I never have a good answer. Maybe part of me kept hoping. Maybe part of me thought if I just tried harder, stayed quieter, caused less trouble, he'd finally look at me the way he looks at Roger. But that wasn't even the worst part. Working in finance taught me one important lesson. Numbers don't lie. People do. I just didn't know how much my father had been lying until 3 years ago. The pattern started long before I could name it. My high school graduation, June 2014, I was valedictorian, top of my class. I'd worked for that honor since freshman year, every late night, every extra credit assignment, every sacrifice. I walked to the podium to give my speech and searched the crowd for my family. Grandma Dorothy was there, front row, smiling, crying a little. The seats next to her were empty. My parents were in Orlando. Roger had won some baseball championship at his college, a regional thing, not even nationals. We couldn't miss Roger's big moment, Mom explained over the phone the night before. "You understand, sweetheart. You're so independent. You don't need us there." I gave my valedictorian speech to a half-empty row and a grandmother who squeezed my hand afterward and said nothing. She didn't have to. Her eyes said everything. Growing up, Roger was the future success story. I was the difficult one. Roger got praise for his grades, B- average. He's finding himself. I got questions about why mine weren't higher. A- in chemistry? Why not an A+? What happened? Roger's achievements were celebrated. Mine were expected or overlooked. Dad tried in his quiet way. He'd pat my shoulder after Mom's sharper comments. "Your mother means well. She just has higher standards for you because she knows you can handle it." I used to believe him. I used to believe a lot of things. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. When it came time for college, both Roger and I were supposed to have education funds. Grandma and Grandpa Morrison, Dad's parents, had set them up when we were kids. Same amount for each of us, $97,000. Roger graduated debt-free, went to a private university, lived in a nice apartment off campus, never worked a part-time job. I graduated with $72,000 in student loans. Dad told me my fund ran out faster because of unexpected expenses during high school, tutoring, he said, SAT prep courses, things you needed. I didn't question it then. Why would I? He was my father. But numbers have a way of telling the truth, even when people don't. And 3 years ago, I started looking at the numbers. They had no idea what was coming. 4 years ago, I had appendicitis, emergency surgery. I woke up alone in a hospital room at 2 a.m., groggy from anesthesia, terrified. I'd called my parents before going into the operating room. Mom answered. "Oh, honey, that's terrible." Her voice was distracted. "But your father has his golf tournament this weekend. You know how important that is for his business contacts. It's the annual charity event. We can't just not show up." She paused. "Can your friend stay with you, or maybe call Daniel?" I didn't have Daniel yet. I didn't have anyone. I was 24, alone in Philadelphia, about to have emergency surgery. Dad never called back. I found out later he'd seen my missed calls and texted Mom, "Tell her she hopes she feels better, busy with tournament prep." I woke up from surgery alone. A nurse held my hand when I cried. Not my mother, not my father. A stranger. 3 days later, the family WhatsApp group was full of photos from the golf tournament. Dad in his polo shirt grinning, Mom in a sundress holding a mimosa, Roger with his arm around both of them. Best weekend ever. Hashtag family first, hashtag blessed life. Grandma Dorothy was the only one who came. She was 74 years old. She drove 2 hours from Lancaster County in her old Buick to sit with me for a week. She cooked, she cleaned, she held my hand when the pain medication made me nauseous. On the 3rd day, she said something I've never forgotten. "Some people don't deserve the title of parent, Anne. Remember that." I didn't fully understand what she meant, not then. That's when everything changed. 3 years ago, I was at Roger's apartment in Society Hill. He'd invited me over for some reason, probably needed help with his taxes. That was usually why he called. He stepped away to take a phone call, left his phone on the kitchen counter. I wasn't going to look, I'm not that person. But then it buzzed. A message from Dad. The preview showed on the lock screen. I couldn't look away. The message read, "She's not even mine. Your mother's mistake from before we got married. If this gets out, I lose everything in the divorce. Keep your mouth shut." I stood in that kitchen, frozen, reading those words over and over. "She's not even mine. Your mother's mistake." I took a screenshot. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. When Roger came back, I made an excuse and left. Drove home in a daze, sat in my apartment until 3 a.m. staring at that screenshot. 28 years. 28 years of being treated like I was less than, like I was a burden, like everything I did was somehow wrong, somehow insufficient, somehow not enough. Now I knew why. Stephen Morrison wasn't my biological father. He'd known for years, maybe decades, and instead of confronting my mother, instead of getting a divorce, instead of having an honest conversation like an adult, he'd chosen to punish me, a child, his wife's daughter, a little girl who had no idea why her father looked at her differently than he looked at her brother. He'd punished me for something I had no control over, something I didn't even know about. That night, I opened my laptop and created a folder. I named it Insurance. I didn't know when I'd use it. I hoped I never would. But I started documenting everything. I'll never forget what he said next. Over the following months, I used every skill I'd learned as an accountant to trace my family's finances. The education fund was the first thing I found. Both trusts were supposed to be $97,000. Roger's was used for college, exactly as intended, paid for his tuition, his apartment, his textbooks. Mine was withdrawn in full on August 3rd, 2016, 1 month before I started college. The money was transferred to an account belonging to Stephen Morrison. 1 week later, according to boat registration records I found through a public database, Dad purchased a fishing boat, cash, $89,000. He bought a boat with my college fund, then watched me take out $72,000 in student loans and never said a word. But that wasn't all. For 6 years, from 2018 to 2024, Dad had been claiming me as a dependent on his federal taxes. I was 22 in 2018, living alone, paying my own rent, my own insurance, my own everything. I hadn't been anyone's dependent since I was 21. Each year, he received between $5,000 and $7,000 in tax benefits from claiming me. Total, approximately $38,000 in tax fraud, using my Social Security number. I hired a CPA to verify what I'd found. She confirmed it within a week. This is identity theft and tax fraud, both federal crimes. I started building a file. Transaction records, bank statements, tax documents, everything organized, dated, cross-referenced. Then I found the credit cards. 3 cards opened in my name between 2017 and 2019, all maxed out. $53,000 in debt I never knew existed. My credit score had been destroyed. That's why I'd been rejected from apartments. That's why my car insurance was so expensive. That's why every financial door I tried to open slammed shut in my face. The statements had been mailed to Roger's address. I found delivery confirmation receipts with his signature. One of those cards had been used to purchase a Rolex watch, $14,200, the same watch Roger wore to Christmas dinner last year, the one he said he'd saved up for. He'd bought it with my stolen identity. I added everything to the insurance folder. 3 files, screenshot, financial records, credit card fraud documentation, 3 years of evidence, 3 years of waiting. I told myself I'd never use it. But then Dad announced the Father's Day reunion. 2 weeks before Father's Day, Dad sent a message to the family WhatsApp group. It's been too long since we've all been together. Let's make this Father's Day special. Everyone come to Grandma Dorothy's farmhouse. Big celebration. I want the whole family there. Something about the message felt wrong. The enthusiasm, the insistence, the way he specifically mentioned wanting everyone to attend. I stared at my phone for a long time. Daniel was making dinner when I told him about the reunion. He paused, spatula in hand. "You don't have to go," he said. "He's my father." "That doesn't mean—" "I know." I took the phone from his hand, set it aside. "I know." That night, I opened the insurance folder for the first time in months. 3 files, a screenshot, a PDF of financial records, a spreadsheet of credit card fraud. I'd been collecting these for 3 years, telling myself I was keeping them just in case, that I'd probably never use them. I closed the laptop and went to bed. But I couldn't sleep. Something about the way Dad had announced this gathering felt like the setup to something. I just didn't know I was the punchline. Little did they know, I was already 3 steps ahead. Father's Day morning, I arrived at Grandma Dorothy's farmhouse at 7 a.m. The sun was barely up. Dew clung to the grass. The old white farmhouse looked the same as it always had. Wraparound porch, blue shutters, rolling hills of Lancaster County stretching to the horizon. The kind of place that holds generations of memories. Not all of them good. I spent the next 4 hours cooking, cleaning, arranging flowers, setting the long table in the dining room with the good china, 36 place settings, 36 cloth napkins, 36 chances for something to go wrong. Roger arrived at noon. He swept in wearing a designer polo, carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He kissed Mom on both cheeks, he bear-hugged Dad, he complimented the decorations, the ones I'd put up. "Everything looks perfect," he said to Dad. "You outdid yourself." Dad smiled. "I had some help." He didn't look at me when he said it. By 1 p.m., the house was full. Aunts and uncles I saw once a year, cousins I barely knew, their kids running through the hallways, noise and laughter and the smell of the ham I'd been preparing since dawn. Dad moved through the crowd like a king accepting tribute. Hugs, handshakes, compliments on his success, his house, his wonderful family. I stayed near the kitchen. During the family photo, Dad positioned everyone on the porch steps. He placed Roger right beside him, Mom on his other side. When I stepped forward, he glanced at me. "Anne, honey, stand in the back. You're taller, you'll block everyone." I stood in the back. That's when Grandma Dorothy appeared beside me. She squeezed my elbow. Her grip was firm for a woman in her late 70s. "Whatever happens today," she said quietly, "hold your ground. You hear me?" I didn't understand. Not yet. The toasts began after lunch. Uncle Jeff went first, raising his glass to the best brother a man could have. Aunt Lila followed with tears in her eyes about how Stephen had always been there for the family. Cousin after cousin stood up, praising fathers, praising Dad specifically, praising the man who sacrificed everything for his children. I stayed quiet. I'd learned long ago that my voice wasn't wanted in these moments. Then Dad stood up. He smoothed his blazer. He pulled out his phone. The room fell silent with practiced reverence. "Thank you all for being here," he began. His voice carried that warm, practiced tone, the one he used for audiences. Being a father is the most rewarding job in the world, but also the hardest. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. "I've been blessed with 2 children, 2 very different children." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "One who has made me proud every single day, and one who has tested me." Eyes shifted toward me. I felt them like heat on my skin. I've thought long and hard about how to express what fatherhood really means, the sacrifices we make, the costs we bear. He raised his phone, so I've prepared something special, a gift, you might say, for all of you and for one child in particular. His thumb moved across the screen. Around the room, phones began to buzz, notification after notification. The sound filled the dining room like an alarm. "I want everyone to see exactly what it costs," Dad said, his eyes finding mine across the room, "to raise a disappointment." The room went still, and in that silence, I understood what Grandma Dorothy had tried to warn me about. This wasn't a family reunion. This was an execution. 36 phones lit up simultaneously. I watched hands reach for devices, watched faces bend toward screens, watched expressions shift from curiosity to discomfort to shock. The WhatsApp message contained an itemized spreadsheet, 28 years of my existence reduced to line items. Hospital birth costs, $14,800. Diapers, first 2 years, $3,200. Childhood clothing, $18,400. Braces, $9,200. Summer camps, $5,100. First car, $14,000. College room and board, $52,000. Cell phone bills, $9,600. On and on it went. $418,000. Dad read selections aloud, his voice carrying across the silent room. Orthodontia, $9,200. Did she ever say thank you? Birthday parties, $1,400 over 18 years. Did she ever appreciate a single one? Someone laughed nervously. Someone else shifted in their chair. I stood frozen by the kitchen doorway. 36 pairs of eyes on me, some pitying, some entertained, some looking away in discomfort. "This is what a thankless child costs," Dad continued. "This is what disappointment looks like in dollars and cents." He'd framed a printed copy, literally framed it, in a gilded frame that matched Grandma's decor. He walked to the mantel and hung it above the fireplace, right next to the family portrait. "A reminder," he said, turning back to face me, "for all of us." The room waited for me to cry, to apologize, to shrink. I'd done it before. At every family gathering, every holiday, every phone call. I'd swallowed the humiliation and smiled through it. But not today. Now, before I show you exactly what was in that folder, I have to ask, how many of you have a folder like mine? Evidence you've been collecting, hoping you'd never have to use. Drop a 1 in the comments if you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, back to that dining room. My hands should have been shaking. They weren't, because buried in my phone was a folder named Insurance, and Dad had just given me permission to open it. For 10 seconds, I didn't move. I let the silence stretch. Let Dad bask in what he thought was victory. Let the room hold its collective breath, waiting for the familiar script. Anne apologizes, Anne cries, Anne makes everyone uncomfortable, and Dad gets to play the long-suffering father. I'd played that role for 28 years. Not today. My hand went to my phone. I opened it, navigated to the folder. Insurance. 3 files inside. "Mom," I said. My voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Since we're sharing numbers today, I have some of my own." The smirk on his face flickered. "What are you doing?" I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd worn all day. "Balancing the books." I walked toward the center of the room. Every step echoed against the hardwood floors. "Keep your phones handy," I said. My voice was steady, professional, the same tone I used in client presentations, because I'm about to send you something too. "Anne," Dad's voice had an edge now, "this isn't the time. Actually, it's the perfect time." I stopped beside him, close enough to see the sweat forming at his temples, close enough to see the first flicker of fear beneath his confidence. "You calculated what I cost you, Dad. Seems only fair I calculate what you cost me." I opened my email app, selected all 36 family contacts. "And whatever you think I'm doing exactly what you taught me." I looked up at him, held his gaze, showing receipts. I pressed send. The familiar chorus of notifications filled the room, ding after ding after ding, spreading through the crowd like dominoes falling. Dad's face went pale. "What did you just send?" The truth. The email contained 3 attachments. I started with the first one. "Dad, you charged me for my college education in your little bill, room and board, textbooks, living expenses." I paused. "But here's the thing. I paid for college myself, $72,000 in student loans, still paying them off." Murmurs rippled through the room. "That's because my college fund ran out, right? That's what you told me." I pulled up the PDF on my phone. "Except I work in finance now, and I know how to trace money." I turned to face the room. "Grandma and Grandpa Morrison set up education trusts for both Roger and me when we were children. Same amount, $97,000 each." I let that number sink in. "Roger used his, graduated debt-free." I pointed to my phone screen. "My trust was withdrawn in full on August 3rd, 2016, 1 month before I started college. The money was transferred to an account belonging to Stephen Morrison." Aunt Lila's hand went to her mouth. $97,000, I repeated. Gone. Into Dad's personal account. I swiped to the next document. 1 week later, he purchased a fishing boat. Cash. $89,000. Dad stood up from his chair. His face was red. "That money was for family expenses. You don't understand the situation." "I understand bank records." I kept my voice level. "I understand wire transfers. I understand that you stole my college fund and bought yourself a boat while I drowned in debt." Uncle Jeff spoke up. "Stephen, is this true?" Dad opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. That's just the beginning. The room had grown colder somehow, or maybe it was just the way people were looking at Dad now. Less sympathy, more scrutiny. I opened the second attachment, a spreadsheet. For the past 6 years, I've been getting strange letters from the IRS, audits, notices about discrepancies. I scrolled through the document. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I hired a CPA to dig deeper. I turned the phone so people nearby could see the screen. Columns of numbers, dates, filings. From 2018 to 2024, Dad claimed me as a dependent on his federal taxes, 6 consecutive years. Cousin Michael frowned. "So, parents claim their kids all the time." "I was 22 in 2018, I said, living in my own apartment, paying my own rent, my own insurance, my own everything. I haven't been anyone's dependent since I was 21. The implication landed. I watched it spread across faces. Each year, he received between $5,000 and $7,000 in tax benefits from claiming me. I did the math out loud. Total, approximately $38,000. Tax fraud, using my Social Security number. Uncle Jeff, who'd worked in banking for 30 years, spoke up. His voice was grim. "That's a federal crime, Stephen." I looked at Dad. "I had to hire a CPA to clean up the mess, $3,800 out of my own pocket, to fix what you did." Mom's hands were gripping the edge of the table. "Stephen, you told me Anne agreed to this arrangement." But it was too late for that. The room was shifting, the narrative was changing, and I still had one more file to show them. I let the silence build. Dad was looking at me differently now. The confidence was gone. In its place was something I'd rarely seen on his face. Fear. "There's one more thing," I said quietly. I didn't open the third attachment yet. Instead, I asked a question. "Dad, do you remember when I applied for my first apartment after college, the one in Rittenhouse Square?" He didn't answer. "I got rejected. The landlord told me my credit score was 520. I paused. I was 22 years old, with a score that said I was a financial disaster. I'd never missed a payment in my life. I'd never had a credit card. Understanding dawned on a few faces around the room. So I pulled my credit report, and do you know what I found? I opened the third attachment. Bank statements, credit card applications, all bearing my name. 3 credit cards opened between 2017 and 2019, all using my name and social security number, all maxed out. I let the number land like a hammer. $53,000 in debt on my record for purchases I never made. Aunt Lila gasped. "This is identity theft," Uncle Jeff said flatly. "Stephen, this is a federal crime." "It took me 4 years to clear my name," I continued. 2 lawyers, hundreds of hours on the phone. But I kept everything, every document, every statement, every piece of evidence. Movement at the edge of the room. Roger was standing up, reaching for his jacket. "Sit down, Roger." He froze. "You're not going anywhere." I met his eyes. "Because one of those credit cards, the statements were shipped to your address." The color drained from my brother's face. "I didn't know," Roger started. "Don't." My voice was calm, cold. "I have the delivery confirmations, your address, your signature." The room turned to look at my brother, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. "You received packages in my name for 3 years, designer clothes, electronics, and jewelry." I pulled up one particular receipt, including a Rolex watch, $14,200, charged to a card with my name on it. Every eye in the room went to Roger's wrist, to the watch glinting under the dining room lights. "You wore my stolen identity to Christmas dinner," I said. "Did you know? Or did you just not want to know?" Roger's voice cracked. "Dad said it was an emergency. He said you wouldn't find out. I didn't think—" "An emergency that lasted 3 years?" I finished. "Buying Rolex watches was an emergency?" Aunt Lila rose from her seat. Her face was ashen. "Roger, how could you?" "I didn't know it was illegal." Roger's composure shattered. Tears streamed down his face. Real ones, maybe. Or maybe just the performance he'd learned from Dad. "He told me Anne would never check. He told you to help him steal from me," I finished. "And you did." That was the moment I stopped being his daughter. But there was one more thing. The screenshot. The one I'd been holding for 3 years. The one that explained everything. I looked at my father. He was pale now, trembling. "There's one more file," I said. "But this one is the big one." Dad saw the shift in the room. He felt it slipping away. So he did what he'd always done. He changed tactics. His shoulders began to shake. His eyes glistened with tears. He pressed a hand to his chest like he was struggling to breathe. "I can't believe this," he said, his voice cracking beautifully. "I gave everything to this child. Everything. And this is how she repays me." A few relatives hesitated. Old habits die hard. We're trained from birth to comfort a crying father. "I made mistakes, yes, but I did it for the family. Everything I did was for the family." He reached for Mom's arm. "Holly, tell them. Tell them I only wanted what was best for everyone." Mom sat rigid. Her jaw worked silently. She didn't move toward him. Dad turned to Grandma Dorothy. "Please, Mama Dorothy, you've known me for 30 years. You know I'm not a monster." Grandma Dorothy remained seated. Her face was stone. "I'm listening, Stephen. I'm listening to everything." Dad's desperation showed now. The performance was cracking at the edges. "Fine." His voice hardened. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You want to play this game, Anne? You want to air dirty laundry in front of everyone?" He stepped toward me, close, too close. "Then let's talk about why," he hissed. "Let's talk about why I've treated you differently your whole life. There are things you don't know, things I've protected you from. A warning, a threat. There are things about you, little girl, that would change everything." He thought he still had leverage. He thought his secret was bigger than mine. He was wrong. You're right, Dad. My voice didn't waver. There is something I didn't know. Until 3 years ago. Dad's eyes widened, just a fraction. What are you talking about? 3 years ago, I was at Roger's apartment. He left his phone on the kitchen counter while he took a call. The color was draining from Dad's face now. A message came through. From you. I pulled up my phone. I wasn't going to read it, but your name was there, and the preview showed something I couldn't ignore. Anne. His voice was a warning. So I took a screenshot. Don't. And I've had it for 3 years. The room was absolutely silent. 3 years of you humiliating me at every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering, and I never said a word. Dad's composure finally cracked completely. Real fear showed in his eyes. I never used it, I continued. I told myself I never would, that it wasn't my secret to tell, that maybe you had a reason for being the way you are. Please, the word came out broken. Please, Anne, whatever you think you know. I didn't come here today planning to do this. My voice was steady. But you did, Dad. You planned this whole thing. You wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. You wanted to make me the villain of your story. I held up my phone. So now I'm going to tell the truth. If you ever loved me, Dad started. Loved me? I felt something crack in my chest. I spent my entire life trying to earn your love. Turns out I never had a chance. I opened the email app, selected all 36 contacts, attached the screenshot. My thumb hovered over send. This is why, I said quietly. This is why you've hated me since the day I was born. I pressed send. The notifications erupted. 36 phones, 36 dings, one after another, a cascade of digital alerts that filled the silent room like gunfire. Dad lunged toward me. Deleted! Make them deleted! His voice was ragged, desperate. Uncle Jeff caught his arm. Stephen, stop! But everyone was already looking, already reading. I watched their faces as the screenshot loaded on their screens. Confusion first, then the slow dawning of comprehension, then shock. Aunt Lila's hands flew to her mouth. Uncle Jeff sat down heavily. Cousin Michael dropped his phone entirely. The screenshot was a text message from Stephen Morrison to Roger Morrison, dated July 12, 2021, 3 years ago. It read, "She's not even mine. Your mother's mistake from before we got married. If this gets out, I lose everything in the divorce. Keep your mouth shut." The room went absolutely still. Then Mom spoke. "Stephen," her voice was barely a whisper. "What is this?" Dad was shaking, all the color gone from his face. "It's not, I can explain. That's not what it—" "Is it true?" The question hung in the air. 28 years of marriage, 28 years of raising a daughter who might not be his. Dad couldn't speak. It was Roger, ironically, who confirmed it. "It's real," he said quietly. His voice was hollow. "Dad sent it to me 3 years ago, made me promise never to say anything." Mom made a sound, a wounded animal sound. She turned and walked toward the door. "Holly," Dad reached for her. She didn't look back. The front door opened, closed. I heard her car engine start, heard it pull away. And standing in the wreckage of his own making, my father finally looked at me, not with anger, with something worse. Nothing. The silence that followed said everything. 36 people processed the same information simultaneously. 28 years of family history rewritten in a single text message. I wasn't Stephen Morrison's biological daughter, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who'd helped me with math homework, who'd walked me to school on my first day. He wasn't my biological father, and he'd known all along, for over 20 years. Suddenly, everything made sense. The differential treatment, the constant criticism, the way he looked at me like I was a reminder of something he wanted to forget. I wasn't a disappointment. I was evidence. "You spent 22 years punishing me," I said quietly, "not because I wasn't good enough, because every time you looked at me, you saw Mom's mistake." Dad's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I was angry," he finally said, "angry and hurt. When I found out you were already 6 years old, you couldn't just treat me like a human being." My voice was steady. "I care about what happened every day after. Every insult, every comparison to Roger, every time you made me feel worthless." Grandma Dorothy rose from her chair. She moved slowly toward Dad. For a moment, I thought she was going to comfort him. Instead, she stopped 3 feet away and looked at him with an expression I'd never seen before. Disgust. "I suspected," Dorothy said quietly. "For years, I suspected something wasn't right, the way you treated that girl." She shook her head. "But I never imagined this." "Mama Dorothy, please." 22 years. Dorothy's voice was iron. "You punished a child for 22 years for something she had no control over, something she didn't even know about." She stepped closer. "You're not a father. You're a coward." The room fractured. People began moving all at once. Voices overlapped, shocked whispers, angry questions, the scrape of chairs being pushed back. "I can't believe this. 22 years of lies. Poor Anne. My God, poor Anne." Aunt Lila grabbed her purse and headed for the door without a word. Uncle Jeff followed, shaking his head. Cousin Michael was already on his phone, probably calling someone who hadn't made it to the reunion. Those who stayed looked at Dad differently now, not with the deference he'd cultivated for decades, with something closer to revulsion. "Everything I did for this family." Dad was screaming now, his composure completely gone. "I kept us together. I protected everyone from the truth." "You protected yourself." Grandma Dorothy's voice was quiet but devastating. "That's all you ever did, Stephen." Around the room, phones were buzzing. The exodus had begun in the family WhatsApp group, too. I caught glimpses over shoulders, people leaving the conversation, blocking contacts, typing furious messages. Dad lunged for my phone. "Delete it! Make everyone delete it!" Uncle Jeff and Cousin Michael held him back. I stood motionless in the center of it all, watching 28 years of carefully constructed lies collapse in real time. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder, gentle, warm. Grandma Dorothy. "Come with me," she said softly. She guided me through the chaos, past relatives who reached out to touch my arm, past cousins who said things like, "I'm so sorry," and "I had no idea." We stopped by the front door. Through the glass, I could see the driveway emptying, cars pulling out one after another. "You're still my granddaughter." Dorothy's voice was firm. "Blood or no blood, that doesn't change." I believed her. "If you've made it this far, I need to know, was I right to expose everything in front of the whole family? Drop public or private in the comments and tell me why. Also, can we talk about Grandma Dorothy for a second? She's been suspiciously calm this whole time, and what she did next changed everything." I found Mom in the parking area. Her car was still there, engine running. She hadn't made it past the end of the driveway. Through the windshield, I could see her sitting motionless, both hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. I knocked on the passenger window. She didn't respond at first. Then slowly, like waking from a dream, she reached over and unlocked the door. I slid into the seat beside her. We sat in silence. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hood. Inside the house, I could still hear muffled voices, arguments, crying. "I'm sorry," Mom finally said. Her voice was raw. "I'm so sorry, Anne. I should have told you. I should have protected you. I should have—" She broke down, sobbing. 28 years of guilt pouring out. I let her cry. I didn't comfort her. I didn't tell her it was okay, because it wasn't okay. 22 years of watching her daughter be mistreated? 22 years of saying nothing? "I knew he knew," Mom whispered. "I've known for years, but I was scared. Scared of losing everything. Scared of what people would think." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I sacrificed you to save myself, and I will never forgive myself for that." I sat with those words for a long moment. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally. "Maybe not ever. I understand. But I appreciate you saying it. That's more than he ever gave me." We didn't hug. We didn't make promises. Just sat there in silence. Mother and daughter. Strangers who shared blood and 28 years of regret. It wasn't closure, but it was honest. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Grandma Dorothy. "Come to my house tomorrow, 9 a.m., alone. There's something we need to discuss." I showed Daniel the message. "What do you think she wants?" he asked. "I don't know, but something told me Dorothy had been planning this for longer than anyone knew." Grandma Dorothy's farmhouse looked different in the morning light, quieter. The remnants of yesterday's chaos had been cleaned away. The front door was open. I walked through the familiar hallway to the study at the back of the house. Dorothy sat behind her oak desk, papers spread in front of her, official-looking documents covered in dense paragraphs and signatures. She wasn't alone. A man in a gray suit stood beside her. I recognized him. Taylor Reed, the family's estate attorney. I'd met him once at Grandpa Morrison's funeral years ago. "Sit down, dear," Grandma said. I took the chair across from her. "I didn't block your father," Dorothy said directly. "Do you want to know why?" "Yes." "Because blocking him would have been a kindness." Her voice was iron. "What I did instead is permanent." She slid a document across the desk toward me. "At 2 a.m. this morning, I called Taylor, woke him from a dead sleep. By 4 a.m., we had finalized new paperwork." She tapped the document. "My will has been changed." I looked at the paper. Legal language swam before my eyes. I don't understand." "Your father was originally set to receive 35% of my estate. That's been reduced to 5%. Dorothy's eyes met mine. "Just enough that he can't challenge it on grounds of being completely disinherited." My breath caught. "Your share has increased from 10% to 30%. Your mother's portion remains the same. She's a victim in this too, even if she was too weak to protect you." "Grandma, I wasn't expecting." "I know." Her voice softened. "That's precisely why you deserve it." She stood and walked to the window, looking out over the property. Acres of Lancaster County farmland that had been in our family for 3 generations. "I started suspecting something was wrong years ago," she said quietly. "The way Stephen treated you, the excuses, the favoritism so blatant and made me uncomfortable." She turned back to face me. "When your grandfather was alive, we tried to intervene. We set up those education trusts specifically because we worried Stephen would mismanage things." Her expression darkened. "We never imagined he'd steal from his own child." "You couldn't have known." "I should have looked harder." Dorothy's voice cracked just slightly. "When you graduated with all that debt, I offered to help, but Stephen told me you refused, said you wanted to prove you could do it yourself." My jaw tightened. Another lie, another manipulation. I believed him. Dorothy shook her head. "I won't make that mistake again." She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out an envelope, cream-colored, thick. My name was written on it in her careful handwriting. "This is the graduation gift I tried to give you 6 years ago. Stephen intercepted it, told me you didn't want it." I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $60,000, dated 2018, and beneath it, a handwritten letter. "To my granddaughter Anne, may your future be brighter than anyone expects. You've always been special. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Love, Grandma Dorothy." The tears came before I could stop them. 6 months later. Stephen Morrison lives alone now. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. Mom got the house. He got an apartment in a complex by the highway. Most of the family has cut contact. The WhatsApp group was deleted and rebuilt without him. 35 people. He's not included. Roger lost his job. Turns out the story spread through professional circles. Nobody wants to work with someone who helped steal their sister's identity. Last I heard, he's doing freelance consulting and posting inspirational quotes on LinkedIn about resilience. Mom and I talk sometimes. Not often. We're not close. Maybe we never will be. But she's trying. That's more than I ever expected. The credit card debt has been cleared. My credit score is 761. My student loans are down to $24,000, paid off aggressively with Grandma Dorothy's gift. Daniel and I moved in together, a bigger apartment in Fairmount, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with actual counter space. We picked it out together. Sunday dinners are our new tradition now, sometimes just us. Sometimes Grandma Dorothy drives down from Lancaster County. Simple, quiet, real. 3 weeks after we moved, a letter arrived. No return address, postmarked from Ohio. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Dear Miss Morrison, I received your DNA profile through a genealogy service and discovered we share a biological connection. My name is Michael. I believe I may be your biological father. I'm not seeking anything from you. I just thought you should know I exist. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. A phone number was printed at the bottom. I stared at that letter for 3 days. I'm not ready. Maybe someday I will be. Maybe I'll call that number. Maybe I'll meet Michael from Ohio and learn about a whole other family I never knew existed. But not today. Some answers can wait. I've already found the ones that matter most. My father sent me a bill for $418,000. He calculated the cost of my diapers and my braces and my birthday parties, but he never calculated the cost of what he did to me. The years of wondering why I wasn't good enough, the nights crying alone, the opportunities stolen, the confidence crushed. There's no price tag for that, and there's nothing he can pay to get me back. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday I'll speak to him again. Maybe I won't. But for the first time in my life, that's my choice, not his. Grandma Dorothy calls every Wednesday. Daniel proposed last month. I said yes. Life goes on. Different. Better. Mine. So if you're out there, trapped in your own version of this story, know that there's another side. Know that truth has power. Know that boundaries are bridges to freedom. You are worth more than the people who failed to love you. I'm Ann Morrison, and my bill is paid in full. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If any part of it resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the disappointment in your own family, drop a comment. Tell me your story. Sometimes just saying "me too" is enough. And if you want more stories like this, check out the videos on your screen right now. There's a whole playlist waiting for you. Remember, your worth is not determined by those who failed to see it.